Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Connections. My name is Seth Weiner, and I am your Rocktioneer on a Tuesday, but not just any other Tuesday. It's November 3rd. You know what that means, right? It's National Do Not Look at Your TV at All Day. Okay, well, maybe you're looking at your TV, but not right now because you're here, and we have a wonderful guest for you all today. Before I get into the guests, I do want to just tell everybody some good news, exciting news. We're going to take all of our broadcasts that we've had, all of the Coffee Connections, and we're going to put them out on audio. Yeah, so if you don't like my face, that's okay. You don't have to look at it anymore. We'll put it out. I'll share it on coffeeconnections.live, and that's where you can go to get all the information and see all of our past episodes if you want to watch them or listen to them through the podcast. But now, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about our guest this week. Our guest is Dov Wilker. Now, Dov he's the regional director of AJC Atlanta. He's been there since 2011 as the national director for Black-Jewish Relations since 2018. He's very active in the community. He serves as a class captain for Lead Atlanta Class of 2015, the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition's Georgia Advisory Committee, and the Advisory Council for the Atlanta Ballet, which I didn't know until the other day, which is an exciting thing we'll talk about at the end. After earning his international MBA from Tel Aviv University, Dov worked for an Israeli software startup. So Dov has done it all, and he's here to tell us all about it, and especially what he's doing right now. So let me bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Dov. How you doing, Dov?
I'm good, man. How are you today, Seth?
I am. They say space is the place.
I mean, they don't have elections on space yet, so I think if you're out there, you don't have to know what's going on in the United States.
Well, but apparently they're building cell phone towers now in the moon. Isn't that? Did you hear this?
No.
I think there's like a bid war between 18. I don't know. I got some third party thing that I saw. At any rate, yes, the cell phone tower on the moon. There's talk of this.
Why do they need them on the moon? Just have it orbiting in space as a part of the space station.
My thought on the moon was that, ground control to Major Tom, David Bowie, and then like they wanted to get David Bowie's music to the astronauts in a better way, and they figured that, Spotify and like so now I don't know. So it's crazy.
You're gonna have Spotify's gonna have a moon playlist now.
Yes.
You can only hear on the moon.
Oh gosh, Dark Side of the Moon. Only
Dark
part
Side
of the
of the
day.
There you go.
Well, Dov, before we get into things, coffee talk. Let's have some coffee talk. Do you have a mug with you?
I have my mug.
Let's take a look at this mug.
There we go. It says, "Ideas take flight."
Wonderful. What's the story behind this?
So one day I was in my office and I saw this mug, and I like the mug in part because it's not a rectangular square mug. Like yours is a traditional coffee mug size.
Well, I mean,
right? It's the world's okayest dad, but it's got a flat base to it that's the same width as the mouth. However, my mug is actually, you can maybe tell, it's curved slightly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then the handle is also slightly curved. It's got this. So it is to be honest, it's just a comfortable mug to be able to drink out of that I think is less than 12 ounces. So I've been using it nearly every day for God, probably 10 years now.
Isn't that crazy? Like that I'm gonna have to ask people how long they've had their mugs for, because as you get older, you kind of stick with things, right? It's like we are creatures of habits for sure, but I mean, when it comes to like things like our mug, we drink out of the same mug.
I'm, at home, I have a different mug at home because this is my office mug, and I happen to be one of the better, few people who gets to come and do an office every day. And this is my mug in the office, but my mug at home, if I don't wash it, then I don't get to use it. So I have to make sure I wash it after I use it every time.
Do you drink coffee? You have 2 kids, you said. And
2 kids,
so
yeah.
Do you drink coffee on the weekends?
Oh, absolutely. I drink coffee every day. I think I drink 2 cups in the morning, and I'm a basic coffee person. I don't have fancy coffee. I got Folgers. I got Maxwell House. I got, whatever I can buy for cheap at Trader Joe's. The low, to me, the cheaper is more likely. And then one day, a few weeks ago, I bought a pound of coffee from 1,000 Faces in Athens.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
And it was something new that I'd never experienced before. Good quality coffee.
So in other words, you experience caffeine.
No, I experienced the nutty and the berries and the chocolate hints that I didn't know existed in a cup of coffee, because Folgers is just ground beans.
No, it was kind of funny when you think about coffee, though, like, because that's coffee, since I remember, was talked about in that way. And now it's like the whole dining experience is that way. It used to just be the coffee. Now it's, the green beans, one was named, the first bean that you're going to eat's name was Saul. I don't know, whatever. Like, they just give you, like, all the details. The cows, they had 12 hours of sun on that, and that on one side. I don't know. They get a little too specific.
Portlandia? You ever seen that show?
Yeah, it's
so I think it's the first episode of the series has that sort of in there. They're in a restaurant and they say, what the chicken's name is something, and they said, well, they go out to visit the farm, and then they end up joining a cult, and then they come back 7 years later to the same table with the same waitress who's been standing there the entire time, and they said, I think I'll have the fish.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I drink probably 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and then an espresso or a macchiato in the afternoon. And like, I lived in Israel for a number of years, so coffee there is an experience. It's not so much about the flavor, but it's about the being. It's about the socialization. It's about community. It's about the process of making your coffee.
Well, they're very European in that sense. Like they do the espresso, little shots, and sit down and sip. And
that's right. Maybe there's a little froth of milk maybe to it. And so I continue to be disappointed by coffee in general, because the experience of having coffee in America is, let me have some, filtered, black coffee, or maybe some sugar, or maybe some cream. But the mug is, the mug grounds me during the day, I can say.
There you go. Now, I'll finish by saying I do like a mug of coffee, but I have the insulated cup, and that's became my mug now, because why? I'm a Gemini, so I don't really savor things. It's hard for me to really just I know if I get a cup of coffee in a mug, it's gone. It's like, it's hot, and then it starts cooling down, and then it's gone. And so I drink a lot more coffee in the mug versus if I have it in the thermos type thing, I sip on it for an hour or so.
That's I haven't gotten that far yet, but that's something to look into. I actually bought my brother yesterday a Stanley Travel French press mug.
That's funny you say that, because that's the one mug that I normally just ask people if they do French press or drip, but you already said Folgers, so I'm like, I'm not going to even go there.
Right.
But when we talk about that, I have the Traveler French press, and I use that as a gift for people now, because I live off that. I do the hot water, the French press, and that's my morning. And I don't do drip anymore.
Ooh. It takes too much time. You need, to me.
It doesn't take time. I press a button on the water. I give my kid oatmeal with the water. I pour the thing. It's like, and quite frankly, it slows me down, which is something that's needed in my life.
So I went to a mindfulness session pre-COVID. It must have been February. that was one of the things they said. They said, find those opportunities to sort of savor a few minutes. So you have found that making French press coffee is partly about your mindfulness, and you're able to focus on it.
Yeah.
You hit the
that and cooking, same thing.
And cooking, I don't cook.
See, it's meditative. It grounds me. It gives me that it helps me balance myself, and so does running. And like those three things: French press, running, and cooking. It's a healthy life.
Interesting. So now I have to ask: do you use an electric kum, or do you use a pot of water on the stove?
No, the glass one that you just press a button and it heats up, boils the water.
Oh, so you use an electric kettle.
Yeah, electric kettle. Yeah,
electric kettle. Sorry, the Hebrew. It doesn't sound as good, an electric kettle in English, but if you say kum in Hebrew, it just sounds better, and because it's the sound,
which is a rarity, by the way, in Hebrew, something sounding better. Well, hey, let's enough coffee talk, but let's talk about your organization, American Jewish Committee, and the Atlanta side of it. I'm just gonna go ahead and hand it over to you.
Great. So, American Jewish Committee is a global Jewish advocacy organization. We have 24 offices in the U.S. and 14 offices overseas in partnerships with 37 Jewish communities around the world. We work in two key areas, intergroup relations and governmental affairs. So intergroup relations is work with the ethnic and religious communities. It's our Black Jewish Coalition. It's engaging with the Latino community, the Indian community, the Asian community. On the religious side, it's with the Catholic community, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Baptist community, the Muslim community, in an effort to create relationships and understanding about who we are as Jews, what are the needs and priorities of the communities that we work with, and overall, create a better understanding of the community that we live in. And the other side of our work is governmental affairs. We work with elected officials and diplomats to advocate for Israel, to advocate and combat anti-Semitism, and to promote democratic values and human rights here in the United States and around the world. So our work is really about finding, long-term bridge building and short-term advocacy, and bringing those two pieces together to be able to advocate on behalf of Jews, both in the United States and around the world. We've been in Atlanta for over 75 years. We have been, as a global organization, we were founded in 1906, so we're coming up on 115 years. We really we sort of engage with people in the middle, but from both sides of the aisle. So we're a non-partisan organization, and we believe very much in using our opportunities to educate about who we are as Jews and what makes us unique.
Interesting. Well, I had no clue that this organization was that old. That's amazing. I mean, that's that's really incredible, and that's. But you mentioned so one thing that comes to mind is that I'm trying to remember the name. Is it ADF, the
ADL?
ADL. Thank you. So do you work with them, or is there parallelness there? Because that's when you describe your mission, that's kind of the first thing I think of.
Yeah. So I think that in Atlanta, I believe that all the Jewish organizations are complementary. So, whether we're working with the Federation, we're working with the Jewish Community Relations Council, the JCC, Jewish Family and Career Services, ADL, the schools, the synagogues, I believe APAC, we're all complementary organizations. We all have our uniquenesses, but then we all, try to partner to advance our issues and the style that we have. So each organization functions a little bit differently from the stylistic standpoint, from an approach, from our leadership. AJC in Atlanta, our young professionals group is called Access. We've had it's been around for over 35 years now as a way to engage young professionals in advocacy. We have a program for high school students called Leaders for Tomorrow. So our work, I'd say, is different than others in our approach, in our style, but also in some of the content. Although, every Jewish organization deals with Israel, and many Jewish organizations work to combat anti-Semitism. Our work specifically with elected officials and with religious and ethnic leaders as well as business leaders. We'll talk about it later, but each year we have a program called the National Human Relations Award, where we recognize a corporate citizen for their leadership in the community. And I think all of those connections and relationships sort of help to differentiate AJC from the other Jewish organizations.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Where are we in terms of anti-Semitism right now? Do you feel, are we at a better place than we've been? Or are we in a worse place? Because I noticed that you had a report that came out recently, right?
Yeah, and you had a slide up from the report on at the beginning in the first minute of slides. So look, the report's called the State of Anti-Semitism 2020. And the report was a combination of two surveys. One, we surveyed the American Jewish population, and we also surveyed the non-Jewish population. And each survey was interviewed about over 1,000 people between the ages of 18 and older. And the American Jewish community is worried about the state of anti-Semitism. 9 in 10 American Jews are worried, are concerned, see it as a problem. 75% of the general U.S. population sees anti-Semitism as a problem. And it sort of surprised me because for the last 8 months, we've been living, inside our homes. We really haven't been connecting with people. But one of the things that we've seen is through the internet is an area where there's a lot of concern around the rise of anti-Semitism. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all of the platforms have unfortunately foster anti-Semitism in some way because of the ability to communicate between people and also the ability to sort of be anonymous, especially on a platform like Twitter or Snapchat. It's not your name that you have to use. It's not your ID. You can, if you're Twitter, I don't know. Do you have Twitter before I say something wrong?
Yeah, Twitter's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
No, but Seth, if your handle on Twitter is Rock Chenier, nobody knows that it's Seth Weiner. It's just Rock Chenier, and it's what Rock Chenier thinks. So I think that there is a lot of concern. There's also, there are direct parallels between level of education and anti-Semitic feelings or understanding. So the more advanced education you have, the more likely you are to understand some of the core tenets of anti-Semitism, know what it is, have an idea of what it is, understand that the Holocaust was a thing, was an event. We're concerned, about a third of the Jewish community of those surveyed is concerned about doing anything that identifies them publicly as being Jewish. And about 25% also are concerned about attending a Jewish institution or event for fear of anti-Semitism. So what does that say? It says that we've got a problem. And it's not, it's not from one specific source. It's from actually 3 different sources, right? It's from the far right, it's from the far left, and it's from Islamist extremism. And actually, just yesterday, there was an incident there was a terrorist attack in Austria, and they were worried that the target was the synagogue. Now, thankfully, it didn't turn out to be the case, but it's in the United States, we saw cemeteries being desecrated. Obviously, we've had the instances in Pittsburgh and Poway. Just the other day in Cobb County, there was someone who put up a yard sign that was something like Nazis for Trump or something like that. It's bad. We're seeing it everywhere, right? You see it in schools, you see it in politics, you see it in sports, you see it from celebrities. I mean, you name it, and there's anti-Semitism there.
Yeah, the Nazi thing is so weird. The fact that people are embracing the swastika again, it's like it just blows my mind. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come. You don't have to be Jewish. It's just if you saw Star Wars, you're like, all right, there's the good guys and the bad guys, and well, depending on which way you look at it, of course. But
yeah.
But it doesn't make any sense that people are like, oh, this is a good idea. I want to wear this. This represents me. It's like, well,
but I think it's important. It's important for us to remember that anti-Semitism exists everywhere by all kinds of people, and it's not we thought that with the end of World War II, that anti-Semitism would go away, that people would understand. But unfortunately, there are just people who hate, and there's no better way, unfortunately, to describe it.
Do you think that with Jewish comedy and how we are, we make fun of ourselves?
Yeah.
That helps or hurts in the sense of, does it like hurt the cause of do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think that Jewish comedy is helpful, right? Because if one thing we as Jews are, less than 2% of the U.S. population, right? We're small. In Atlanta, we're maybe 150,000 out of a region of 6.5, 7 million. So again, we're an insignificant number, and we have an outsized awareness because of celebrity, because of TV, because of movies. So what I think that Jewish comedy has helped to do, and I think all of it helps to create awareness of Jews, which is, on the one hand, you could say, well, doesn't that make it easier for them to hate us? But on the other hand, I look at it and say, you know what? It makes it a lot easier for us to be understood, because there's somebody that can always be connected to us. So if Seinfeld is sort of the easy example of that one, while unfortunately it's not on TV anymore, nobody would question whether or not Seinfeld was Jewish.
Right.
So, whether they I hope that because they hate it, hopefully they didn't hate Seinfeld, right? It's a good show.
I mean, some people could, but
they could, but I don't think they're going to be anti-Semitic because of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Although I'm always reminded of the scene from Seinfeld about the anti-dentite.
Yes, of course.
Right. Like the dentist who becomes Jewish just so he can tell the jokes. Yeah. I do think actually that we've that we have sort of increased our awareness about the type of jokes that we tell about ourselves, because of the rise of anti-Semitism. We're being much more careful about it, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I have a 7-year-old son, right? And I remember I remember vaguely being 7, but I definitely remember being young and being Jewish. And, my son actually identifies himself as Jewish. He's from a mixed marriage and whatnot, but I guess, he blows the shofar. He's a Jew. And, but I remember as a kid, like the feeling of like being the stereotype of being cheap or being these things. And I'm noticing that in his world, he doesn't have that. He doesn't come to me with those things. And wow. I thought about that the other day beyond our talk. And I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like he doesn't identify in these negative ways that I did. And I don't know, maybe it's fortunate because of the school he goes to or the people he's around, but I felt like that was different.
It's also a sign of the times a little bit. I was in an interview yesterday with somebody about sort of anti-Semitism in the Deep South. And one of the things I believe is because, we live in a community that in the city of Atlanta where there is a large Jewish population, people know a little bit more about us. So, in a community where there are no Jews or where, right. There might be, the synagogue used to be, you're more likely to sort of directly experience that because there aren't Jews within the community to be able to help, challenge people's thoughts.
And they also have the events like you had the Atlanta Jewish Music Festival, the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival, the Kosher Barbecue Festival, like these type of citywide events that people see. It creates that. You're right. It breaks down that border. And people are like, oh well, it's comforting. Now, what kind of work do you do with you mentioned all the Muslims and the blacks and all this, but I feel like the blacks. I feel like racism and anti-Semitism have so many similarities and all and it really comes down to cultural differences, you know. And are you working with other like civil rights and sort of things like that to help?
To help.
There's just
question So one of our initiatives is called the Atlanta Black Jewish Coalition.
What's that?
So the Black Jewish Coalition was founded in 1982 in response to the renewal of the Voting Rights Act by John Lewis and Cecil Alexander. John Lewis at the time was a city council member. And Cecil Alexander was a Jewish architect who designed Turner Field, Coca-Cola headquarters, the building formerly known as AT&T, the Bell South Tower, just to name a few, and also designed the interim flag for the state of Georgia. When the Georgia flag transitioned from having a Confederate flag within, right, the interim flag was Cecil's design. And Cecil was a leader in the civil rights movement in that he often brought together the Black and white leadership of the community at his home for conversations. So the coalition has been active for nearly 37 years. And we work in partnership, with the National Urban League, or with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, with the Center for Civil and Human Rights, with various leaders in the Black community, as well as with the Jewish community, to create a better understanding of who we are as Jews, who the Black community is, to advocate together on important legislation like voting rights, like the hate crimes legislation in Georgia, and also to sort of increase the awareness of the Black Jewish community. Right, a lot of what we've seen as a result of the summertime is an understanding within the Jewish community of our own diversity. So using the Black Jewish Coalition as a platform to increase awareness about Black Jews and other Jews of color. I mean, the fact that not all Jews are of Ashkenazic descent. In Israel, over 50% of Israelis are not Ashkenazi. Right. In Atlanta, while yes, many of our synagogues are Ashkenazi, I mean, we clearly have a very diverse Jewish community from Latin America, from Israel, from Asia, from Europe, all who represent different backgrounds and lifestyles. So our work in the coalition is really focused on sort of creating opportunities for people to meet, to discuss the issues of the day, and have a frank conversation with each other. We do, something exciting that we actually just launched yesterday is we're doing a Black Jewish teen initiative. So getting high school students, juniors and seniors in high school, to come together to get to know each other a little bit better, because these opportunities for true understanding, we know, will lead to better relations in the future. Mm-hmm. So and that's similar. It's based on that model that we engage with all of the other minority communities that we work with. But this summer it's been a lot about understanding, racism, criminal justice, policing, civil rights in America today.
Yeah, no, it's something, man. So you guys are very busy.
We do a lot. And it's also, I would say, like, in light of today's election day, you've got an interesting example of it, and this is really a nonpartisan comment. But if you look at Kamala Harris and her husband Doug Emhoff, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. He's Jewish. She's both of Black and Indian descent, so she is herself is biracial. And it's a lot about how we connect with each other. I mean, the bonds that unite the Black and Jewish communities have been together for 70, 80 years. I mean, you can go as far back. So the opening night film at the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival in February was this film called Shared Legacies. It's a documentary about the history of the Black-Jewish relationship during the Civil Rights Movement. And one of the initiatives that it doesn't touch on, though, because it focused on the Civil Rights Movement, was Rosenwald schools, which were, are you familiar with Rosenwald schools?
No, just Epstein schools.
So Julius Rosenwald was the CEO of Sears and Roebuck, and he, a Jewish businessman, and he wanted to help expand education. So he invested in local community schools across the South, really across the United States, to ensure that Black communities had proper education. So he would put in a third of the funding. The local communities had to put in a third of the funding, and the local municipalities had to put in a third of the funding because they were required to have schools. So it's not just a civil rights issue that brings Blacks and Jews together. I mean, it's something that our whether it's through, our view of the Bible, their view of the Old Testament, the story of Exodus, the role of, faith in our communities, the connection between the Black and Jewish communities. I think is something it's a really strong bond that, like every relationship has had its ebbs and flows over the past. But I think especially now with the rise of, white supremacy being a key threat to our communities and to all communities, minority communities, I think is something that we can really, really be appreciative of.
Yeah, and then also the what you mentioned before. So there's that battle. Then there's also the educational battle and being able to help a generation from a culture move forward and give them the tools to be able to move beyond their means.
Well, so I would challenge that, Seth, a little bit. Look, the Black community doesn't need the Jewish community for that, right? They've been doing great.
No, I'm saying that there's a parallel though in terms of working together.
Oh yeah,
there's not a need, but there's if we're fighting the same enemy, there's other ways that that there's connection to be able to build upon.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's right, I would say it's a unique relationship that we have. As people often don't think about the Jewish community as a minority community.
So, but that's a kind of a really interesting thing, because when you said that we're 2%, that the Jewish population is 2% of America, that's a minority. That's a huge minority. But no one. If you ask anyone, I don't think anyone would say that the Jews are a minority in America.
A few years ago, there was an anti-Semitic incident or a few of them at a public university in the Southeast. And so I had a meeting as a part of a small group of AJC leaders, had a meeting with the chancellor, the provost, maybe the vice chancellor for communications, and the dean of student life, something like that. And so I asked the question, how many Jews do you think that there are? How many Jewish people do you think there are in the world? And one person said, I don't know, 50 million. And another person said 100 million. And one person said, I don't know, maybe 75. And I was like, there's 15 million of us in the world. And these are, leading administrators at a very large public institution. They had no idea what the Jewish population was. And it goes to show, I think, in part going back to the earlier comment about, culture and Jewish, comedy, we do have an outsized voice in popular culture today, because there are so many Jewish people who are famous celebrities or have been famous celebrities. I think there's probably fewer today than there were, 20 years ago. But, if you look back nostalgically, I mean, there are a lot of us in the arts, in culture and music, things like that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we're running out of time, so I just want to kind of, and I appreciate the time you've given to this. It seems like there's a lot to talk about. But I'm curious though, as being a fundraiser, how do you raise money? Because it sounds like you have you have a very massive organization, not just here locally, but nationally. So how does it work?
Yeah.
How do you raise? Is it personal foundations, personal donations, a mix of all? What do you got going?
Yeah. So we raise money from three primary sources: individuals, family foundations, and corporations. I wouldn't say that our fundraising is novel. We connect with people, we meet with people, we want them to understand, who we are, what we do, why we're important, why it's important to support us, the value that we provide. That's one way. That's the primary way that we raise money. The second way, we have honorary events. So you're a auctioneer. We have two big honorary events a year. For example, this year on November 18th, we're presenting former Senator Johnny Isaacson with our National Human Relations Award. That award in the past few years has been presented to Carol Tomei, who's the current CEO of UPS, David Abney, the previous CEO of UPS, Frank Blake, who's the former CEO of Home Depot, Paul Bowers, former CEO of Georgia Power, Jim Hannon, former CEO of Georgia Pacific, Richard Anderson, former CEO of Delta, Larry Gellerstadt, Cousins Properties. We have these wonderful. Wait, let me. I feel like I missed somebody. Larry, Frank.
I mean, the fact you remembered all of them, I'm amazed.
Yeah,
that's a lot of names there.
Well, they're also very supportive of us. I think that's one of the things is that people, when we ask somebody to accept to be our honoree, we want to make it so that it's not just about that one event, but that they stay connected with us.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that's really been very special for us. Is strengthening these relationships that we have, and it's not just with them, but it's ensuring that their companies, their partners, that they have a positive relationship with us. And we create.
Normally, go ahead.
We create meaningful experiences at the event itself, so that it's not just a one-time thing.
So those were in-person events, though. How do you transition on November 18th to?
You still find ways to make it personal. So I believe very strongly in that a fundraising program you should be able to see everybody if you can, right? You want to find those ways of making people feel that they're there with others. So, enabling them to chat either with others or with the honoree, whether there's a tactile piece of it so that they have, the program similar to what they would have received at the event if they were in person. We haven't quite gone to the point, although many organizations are, of delivering meals, desserts, appetizers, beverages, alcohol, wine. We haven't gotten quite there yet, but there's a lot of organizations that are doing it. But I believe that, especially in this virtual world, anything that we can do to make people to use our five senses to connect, and also it's about the work that we're doing. So, we talked a little bit about our State of Anti-Semitism report, but it's people understanding that their support for us makes a difference and enables us to create initiatives like these surveys, like, furthering Black-Jewish relations, like working with elected officials. Everything is connected for us.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's that's wonderful. Definitely. Next time we talk, I'll block an hour of time.
Oh, we don't have an hour? Well, I thought we had an hour. I'm ready to keep going.
No, we can keep going for a little bit though. That's fine. Well, so November 18th, if anyone's interested, they can go to ajc.org. Now, one question, when I first got introduced to you, I was like, AJC?
Yeah.
And if you're not in Atlanta, AJC also stands for Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the main newspaper. How often do people get confused with that?
Oh, every single day. I like to refer to them as the other AJC. In fact, whenever
you were here first, though, 100 years or something.
Right? We were. That's right. I mean, they're a merger of two newspapers, so we've been around longer. When I reach out to a new reporter at the paper, I always say, "Hi, this is Dove, and I'm happy to connect with you at the other AJC." By the way, there's another AJC in Atlanta. It's a AJC International. They're a food company.
Okay.
But we primarily go by, because of the brand issue with the newspaper, we more often than not go by American Jewish Committee.
Yeah.
Makes it a little easier for us.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Well, we close all of our episodes by asking our guests to think of another guest for the show. And now that we've talked, I'm curious if you have someone that you'd like to recommend, an Atlanta nonprofit organization, to join me on Coffee Connections.
Yeah, so I'd like to recommend my friend Jay Bailey, who's with the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. He will be able to describe what they do much better than I can. But he's a tremendous leader in the community, and I think somebody who you would enjoy chatting with.
All right. Well, I look forward to that. Thank you so much. And folks, we'll be back. I'll be back on Thursday. And hopefully you'll still be alive and well and not glued to your TV and be able to join us here at Coffee Connections. Dove, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate having you.
It was absolutely my pleasure. But wait, who are you going to be with on Thursday?
This Thursday, that's a good question. Because I totally got mixed up with days, but Thursday is, that's right, the Gateway Center. Gateway
Oh,
Center.
very
Are
cool.
you familiar with them?
I've seen the name. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but it sounds interesting. I'm interested to tune in to be able to check it out and learn more.
Well, and everyone watching, you tune in too. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. And be safe, be happy, be healthy, and drink coffee.